environment and the people around me.
Totally. I think, I'm sorry if I'm stealing this from you guys, but I was just having a little thought, and when I was listening to you speak earlier, one thing that was a huge phrase that you said was dropping the ego at the door and realizing that who you are as a person is not tied down to your material things and is not tied down to what you have and what you own. I feel like when you learn that wealth comes in different ways, and wealth isn't just money, it isn't just things, it isn't just cars. Wealth can also be experiences, and wealth can be used in such better ways. When you become wealthy, you don't have to show that you are wealthy. Because when you are a person who makes money to buy that car or buy something to show off, really your intentions with wealth isn't aligned. And you have to learn what is your true intentions with the money that you want to make. Because if it's to show off, if it's to buy something to make you look better, your relationship with money and your relationship with wealth is out of line. And you have to figure out what is your true intention with the money you want to make. And like you said, your intention is to one day learn how to scuba dive, to help the ocean.
I know how to scuba dive.
Well, that's amazing then. You've already done step one. But it's learning our intention to where we want to take our wealth. And yeah, anyways, from there, if you'd like to.
No, I think it's brilliant. And it comes down to falling in love with your impact and losing the attachment to the things that you feel make you more impactful. And what I've learned is that the moment that I let go of needing the things or thinking the things were going to make me look better or help me gain more wealth was the moment that I actually began to attract more wealth because I wasn't focused on it. And we find a bit in society that, and you see this, low class, wants more. Middle class are the ones that actually spend the most money that they don't have. The wealthy and the elites actually know how to use their money. They give it away. They use it for different things. They know how to invest. The middle class is the ones that are suffering the most because we get a little bit more money than we did when we were younger, a little bit more money than we did when our families were poor. So we actually go beyond our means. And unfortunately, society has helped us program us to think that we need to do that we are not enough. And this is why we were so big over and above fear, frequency level 200. And we as a humanity, only 17% of us are just over 200. Imagine we're teetering between courage and fear. So we have to be very conscious on how we hold our frequency state, right? That's why we're together, because all of us are holding this energy and this high frequency. But imagine what happens when you go into a state with someone that is low frequency. Right?
So, guys, do you remember that pyramid that I always show y'all? Oh, it would have been so kicked ass if they could actually pull it up. Pardon? Oh, yeah, it would have been. So we know the exact pyramid that we've been talking about, right, in classes. So Rhonda's literally making a reference to that right now. So what is the highest level of frequency? Can you remember? Enlightenment, right? So as an enlightened family, right, what do? They understand, okay, this is a matrix that we're living in. This is not real life. This is a facade. It's fake. How do we get out of this? Now that we know this, how do we get out of this, and how do we move forward with love? And not just love for ourselves, but love for humanity. There we go, see? Love for humanity. Oh, it's gone again. Okay. Awesome, right? And notice, there's enlightenment, peace, joy.
It's not showing up on the back.
Oh, yeah.
You put it on the big screen?
We can see it.
We can see it.
Yeah, but we don't need it. So there's enlightenment, peace, joy, love, and I've heard all 4 of those words from y'all in this short time without even having to pull this up. So is it because you just has been embodying this and this is just how you live? Or is it something that you're faking and it's like,
Well, certainly not faking it. It's consciousness.
We're definitely
right?
faking it.
Yeah, but it's consciousness when you actually realize that your thoughts do create an outcome. You're very conscious in what you think and the people that you are surrounding yourself by. Like when I realize that the people that I'm around can affect my outcome, I was like, I'm being very selective. And then knowing that whatever we put out, like we had to practice this early on, knowing that, we were in a fear state when we were losing everything. And then we realized, we actually had a conversation with Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer, like what is happening, how do we handle this? We actually have it in a recording, it's pretty awesome. And we thought we were attached to the money, why we couldn't let it go. And he's like, no, you're just attached to being right. Let go of being right about the situation that you were in. And we realized like everything that we were communicating, what we were doing, she's gonna feel it. Even if we hide the conversation, she'll feel it. So we were very conscious early on in maintaining our frequency level so that she didn't wear it. And that others around us, we were very, very aware of who we let her be around. We selected mentors and people, and those that were not in a conscious state, we just gracefully walk away. You have to be really selective, so we've been conscious about how the state that we've been in at all times.
I absolutely love that.
It's all mellow.
No, it's like it's one of those things that we can only give Hanalei, especially like when we're like moving on. It's also just what can we provide, and bringing on the different mentors, and the people. It's like, all right, we can provide you with this, but then let's bring in the right people, like the inner circle. It's kind of what we have here, And she's been to 100 entrepreneurial events. If you think about that, that's crazy. One of the things I'm going to be speaking about tomorrow, and I just added this today because I was looking at like what's gone over, what have you guys heard, what should be provided, what is Rhonda, Hanalei, and I'm like, man, one of the things is bring your kids to everything you do, and you're like, man, that's crazy. But you're wondering, like, how did she get to this place? We brought her to freaking 100 entrepreneurial events, and we put her into the environment, and it wasn't a force. It's kind of like the force versus power versus force, right? It's like it was like, hey, we're bringing you to this, and they're subjective to the environment, and they're either subjected to the environment of places like this, or they're subjected to, I don't know, man. It's like you can have not the greatest environments, so we always try. We always put her in the environments like where you can have the best. And mentors,
And also I think that, especially what you were saying about bringing me to entrepreneurial events ever since I've been young, it also was a opportunity to, even if I didn't understand it, because like let's say I'm 6 or even younger, of course I'm not going to be like where I'm at right now speaking on stage about all this stuff, but it was a great opening to at least listen and hear. And kind of what I say is, as kids we soak up knowledge, we are like sponges. Even subconsciously, we may not understand it consciously, but subconsciously that information is held there. And learning to, ever since a young age, being able to be open to questions. And one thing I was taught was always asking questions for things I didn't understand. So if there was a subject or something that I was listening in, or eavesdropping on a conversation you guys were speaking about, I'd always like ask specifically. I'm like, hey, what's this? Just up front. And it's something that you guys never shut me down of saying, oh, I'll tell you later, or oh, you'll understand when you're older. Because those things, they put an expectation, or they put a view of, okay, it's now training my brain to say, okay, don't ask another question again. It's something as simple as that, but when we're super young, that's how our brain starts to be wired, is when we're shut down, when we're put in this space of, no, you don't need to know, you're too young, all this stuff, is when we start to think that, okay, asking questions are bad. And every time I ask a question, I'll get shut down. So when you're open to those questions and when you're open to that new information from a young age, you can learn so much more. And sorry, that was just a little thing.
And treating them like they matter and their voice matters. We read the book Celestine Prophecies, and there's one part of the book, I don't know if you guys have ever read it, and the man was picked up by this woman and her daughter was in a car, and he's like, oh, how old is your daughter? And she said, why don't you ask her? And we learn from just that one statement in the book that they matter. And if we keep answering for them, every time like a waiter would come, oh, what would your daughter like? And say, why don't you ask her? And she's like, 5. I want mac and cheese. I want this. He's like, can she have this? I said, ask her. This is what she's chosen. We always helped her feel that her voice mattered. And sometimes we would always say, okay, this is your decision, but just know there's consequences, good or bad. What are you going to choose? And sometimes she chose to eat too much candy and she got super sick.
I definitely experienced some consequences. But every time I was presented with the offer of, okay, you can do this or this, you make your own decision, it was installing independence. Like, even if I didn't know it back then, it was installing a role of independence of I get to make my own choices. And one thing that every time this happened, when they're like, hey, do you want to eat this? Do you want to eat that? That's a simple example. I would say, okay, I want to eat this. They're like, hey, we support you in this choice, but just going to let you know, you may not feel the best tomorrow, but you are going to experience that, and if you want to, you'll learn from experience. And so learning from experience was one of the best things, because it wasn't just like, let's say, a myth or a legend. It wasn't just like my parents telling me, if you eat too much sugar, you will feel terrible and you will crash. It was like not something I feared for. It was like something I had to experience. And now I'm like, okay, that's not a good idea. I will rethink that next time. So that's just like a little example of preparing different ways to learn, or I don't know. Anyways.
Long story short, Hanalei was 5 years old, eating all the candy in the world.
I learned a day later not to do so.
So, you also said something that I definitely want to touch base on, and I want to get into parenting, all right? We don't like being wrong. We always want to be right, right? There's a book, I call it like, I guess, a marketing Bible for me, by Paul Arden, I think, How to Be Great. Read it? So it says, why is being right wrong, and why is being wrong, is it right? What do y'all think about that statement? And then, actually answer that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're always being right, then you're never open to other perspectives, and that's very closed-minded, and it keeps you from learning. If you always have to be right, you're making other people wrong, and, then you act like you're the smartest one in the room, and in reality, you're the dumbest, right? It's just simple stuff, I think. But we even as husband and wife, sometimes you want to overpower someone. You want to make, it's like, are you making me wrong? You're making me wrong for this? Like, this is my decision. Don't make me wrong for it. And then you're like, oh, because we're at that point where we can call each other out,
We also have to check ourselves constantly, because there will be little tiny things that may be happening in just family, business, stuff like that. And it's lucky that we have like 3 of us, because we can always be like the middle person to say like, okay, that's a pretty dumb thing while you're arguing, like, hey, maybe let's tighten this up. But it's also like learning to accept other people's opinions, and it's learning to hear from each side of the story, because when you're trying to be right constantly, you'll never be able to learn and you'll never be able to grow. So, yeah, take it from there.
Yeah, this was one of the things before Hanalei was born. We went to, what was the event? That integrity, I'm trying to think of,
Law of attraction.
Landmark.
Oh, the landmark.
It's like we learned some very big principles there, and one of the things was about being right, and it just changed our whole thing from when we went to arguments for like 3 or 4 days to where you're like, oh, I don't hold. It's like, this is what it is, and we'd just end it right there. I was like, it was simple things. And I tell you, man, that's some of the simple things in like in your relationship. When you start learning certain things, it's just, it makes things so much more simple.
Awesome. I love those answers. I have another question. What would 5 things as parents, right, had such success growing up your daughter? She has such an amazing mind for her age, which is something that, you know, shouldn't even be a normal. It should be a normal, right? So what are the 5 things that you feel was the biggest, right, factor for her success and for your success as parents as well?
Well, I think the easiest question would be to ask her what she thought. I can share what I think, but I don't know what.
Yeah.
I don't know what really
Let's
was.
start
It's
with
an answer for
Hanalei.
all 3.
Yeah. For us, it was giving Hanalei the space, treating her like a human, right? Like really treating her like she was an equal, allowing her to make decisions. That was really big. Not being the one that knew more. She teaches us every single day. My dad used to say, children are meant to be seen and not heard, right? I know more than you. You listen to me. I was like, I am not doing that. Like, this one is so wise, right? So that was a big one. And getting out of my own way, you know, getting out of my own way and just allowing was, you know, probably the best form of growth and parenting that we could have is surrendering to what could actually happen.
3
know.
words that we took
Yeah.
out of our vocabulary
right.
was no, not, and don't.
Yeah. We took this out of our vocabulary, so we had to say this again because he talks sometimes just really, we took out the words no, not, and don't from our
I
vocabulary
want
completely.
everybody to try this.
Yeah, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, it's
like
huge.
really loud?
Out of your vocab, take this out of your, and I'm talking about
It's
everybody.
really
This is
challenging.
not about just having kids.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the relationships. Everyone in this room, attempt to take no, not, and don't out of your vocabulary. Because we're programmed as, if you think about all your parents, and this was the first personal development event that Rhonda dragged me to. And I was like, this
The
was
event that he didn't know how much I paid for.
15 years ago. And I'm like, what is this? How much have you paid for this? And this guy was talking about, he goes, the biggest thing you can do is take no, not, and don't out of you. And I'm like, looking at him like, what the hell are you talking about?
Because it's a negative reinforcement statement. How many times, you're going to start counting yourself, do you say, don't do that? No, I don't want that. So instead, when someone says that to you, have an accountability partner, because we did it with ourselves, say, what do you want? And what that does, it reframes your mind to actually start thinking of what I want. Imagine how often when someone says, what do you want to go for dinner? Well, I don't want pizza. I don't want pasta. What do you want? We completely took it out of our vocabulary. It was so extremely hard.
1 year before Hanalei was born, and we practiced, just do this, try this
You'll
with
make
your
each other
spouse,
crazy,
partner.
too.
It's difficult, but I tell you, it'll change the world on how you look at things and how you communicate.
Yeah, so instead of, so then she's born, right? So I would say, I don't want this. He's like, what do you want? Oh, stop it. What do you want? Well, I don't do that. What should I do? So we were holding each other accountable. So when she was born, how many times do we say, don't run around the pool, you're gonna fall. Tread lightly, walk slowly, tell them what to do. They grow up in a positive reinforcement state of mind. And I still very rarely would use the word don't. Like, sure, you stop, use things that are dangerous, so they know when to use them. However, you start shifting the way you communicate, especially their minds are so pliable, they just are completely shifted. We grew up in a negative state of programming. If you help your child grow up in a positive state of programming, their frequency levels are already at a natural high level. It's challenging. However, you can do it. You can do it, and that's the biggest. That's absolutely
That was one of the biggest things ever.
Thanks for reminding me of that. Yeah, reminding us.
So, Hanalei, in your personal opinion, what were the 5 things that you felt like your parents did that has helped you grow to the person that you are right now?
I feel like they hit already some pretty big ones.
Yeah.
But I feel like mainly just growing up in a space of open-mindedness, in a space of being able to try new things and being able to do what I want, or just like constantly open to something new. If I wanted to try something new, if I wanted to maybe try a sport or try an activity or something like that, it was always open. And it was always like, let's figure out what makes you happiest to grow. And one of the biggest things, I already spoke about this yesterday, was getting asked, what do you want to be now? Instead of what do you want to be when you grow up? And that was something that propelled me forward into who I am now, because how I've grown up has always been whatever possibilities are endless, and it was less of a negative mindset of, oh, we can't do this, this isn't happening, or oh, we don't have enough money. It was always like, let's figure out solutions to problems instead of dwelling on problems. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but being able to have an open mind to problem solve and to seek for new opportunities instead of dwelling on the lack of opportunities. And so it's keeping that open-mindedness for those new things, for that new information, instead of dwelling. So that's what I would say.
I love that. So, in your opinion as well, right? Do you feel like the way that your parents communicate with each other has also helped you to think differently?
Yeah, I think being able to have just growing up in an open conversation and space. Like, my parents discuss business when I'm around. My parents, they discuss things that, like, when you're a kid, this is from what I've heard, like, from my mom's stories and my dad's. Of course, I can't say from experience, but I know, like, even a lot of people who have had just growing up in a space where, like, they would get told, oh, you're too young to understand this. You don't need to hear about this. And, like, if there's problems in their life, it would always be shielding their child away from it and not letting them know. One thing that if there was something going on, if they didn't say anything, I felt it. And that's something with most kids, is they feel the emotions and the energy from the people around them and from their parents. So if there was something going bad, like if something happened business-wise, lost a lot of money, someone did something really rude, I picked up on that. And instead of me, like, maybe let's say I overheard a call of them talking about, like, oh, this person really screwed us over, we lost a lot of money on this stuff. Instead of, like, me going and asking them, hey, what's that all about? I kind of heard a few things. Instead of them being like, oh no, you don't need to hear about this, like, go back to do what you're doing. They would be like, hey, okay, this happened. We're still trying to work it through. There's nothing you need to worry about right now. We're working it. And so it was always like, oh. So I was always open in the conversation. It was never shoot away.
Yeah, we have this philosophy called the three-legged table. And if you can imagine a four-legged table, if one leg is off, it still stands. It can wibble, but it'll stand. However, a three-legged table, one leg is off, it falls flat on its face. So we all have a leg on our family's table. And if one person was off, we were like, you need to pick up your leg, we're falling. Like, especially in travel in Hanalei, I'm little, she was picking her bags, walking through the airport, like, responsibility, you know? And we're like, Hanalei, you gotta pick it up. Dad, you need to pick it up. Mom, it's like, we called each other out, and we'd have our three-legged table meetings. Okay, this is the deal, this is what we got. You're responsible for this, you're responsible for this, and we all hold each other accountable for it. And I think that's really what's helped our family stay. We're so close because we discuss the good, the bad, the ugly, and we hold each other really accountable for those responsibilities as well.
So, here's a really awesome question. It's a two-part question. Okay? as parents, how did you feel knowing that your daughter made her first business transaction? And then the follow-up question to that is, how did you all feel knowing that the daughter that you raised was able to earn over 6 figures by the tender age of 12?
Let me just start this. It was really the question that we shared before from Hanalei and Rhonda. It's like, what do you want to be now? Because it wasn't about, hey, let's start this business. It was asking her, what does she want? And that's like the big difference of what, it's like, what do you want to do? And she's like, I want to be a fashion designer. All right, well, let's see this. And allowing them, I think it's like, this is one of the things I want to share tomorrow, where I wrote this in what I want to share tomorrow, is having that relationship with your children, of allowing them to do what they want. So it's not about like, oh, she made 6 figures. It's like, it doesn't freaking matter. It's that relationship you can create with your children while they're doing that. The fact that they can make 6 figures, that's freaking awesome. So it doesn't like, we're like, oh, she made 6 figures. It's like, what was that bonding moment of going through the process? That's schooling. Schooling is BS, man. It's a bunch of BS.
We believe it is.
It is.
Schooling. This is schooling.
Like, are we in the right audience?
No, this is the right audience for that. It is. Guys.
Yeah. It's learning profit margins. It's being with your children and doing the things.
And it's, I think that one thing I'll say, education is very valuable, but it's how we educate ourselves and it's how we grow. A lot of times the school system caters towards a certain style of trying to raise a certain person, of working in a manufacturing space. A lot of times it's like just memorize stuff, put it on a piece of paper, finish it. There's people working that way, and some people, the information flies out their head. For me, I was never good in school, and I was considered one of the dumb kids who got held back a few years because I couldn't retain the information, write it down, and it just wasn't how I learned. And so I think that if you're listening, I don't think you would think I would be considered the dumb one who wouldn't understand a lot of things, but I was considered that in school, and I was actually bullied for that a lot of times. But it's how we learn in different ways, and it's how we grow, and when we are able to cater to that growth, you can flourish so much. So learning through experiences in life more, learning through that creativity was what helped me grow so much.
And what we did with Hanalei is, many people, and you might think this, that we just supported her, we just paid for everything, she built a company. No, she actually borrowed $20. We asked her, what did she want to be now? It took her 3 weeks. And she's like, I got it. I want to be a fashion designer. We said, okay, how are you going to do it? What are you going to do? She said, can I borrow $20?
And then I bought threads, needles, fabric, and I'm like, okay, time to learn how to sew. And I started to sew little keychains, literally in the shape of food, to my mom's clients at her big-time events. And in the halftime breaks, I would go up to people, I'd be like, hey, I want to tell you this story. And I would basically tell them my vision, my goals, and what I wanted to do in my dream of becoming a fashion designer. And they're like, I would love to help you out. And so that's the reason why they bought what I was making, was because I had that story and I had that vision, especially being very young. I wanted to achieve something greater than myself. And that was what propelled me into starting. And of course I had guidance and of course I had help, but taking that initial step and taking those initial moments of, okay, let's figure something out.
And every step along the way, like that's where the learning came from. So like she made, she $20, gave her $20 back, made like 300. Like, okay, now what are you gonna do with it? And so we gave her 3 options. There were 3 things that she had to do with everything that she ever made. One was she saved it, one was she gave it, and one was she spent it. So she had always had those 3 buckets, if you will, that she put her money into. And every time we're like, okay, $100 goes to savings, another $100 goes to giving, and you can keep $100. And then we kept doing that. And so as she was learning, then she would make something more. And then she made $600. And then she made her first collection in one of our first events, her first events she spoke at. She sold like $1,600 worth of her collections.
Wow.
Yeah. How did that feel?
That was a really crazy moment because I had no idea what was going on because I was just so shocked.
Yeah,
I was
she was like,
wow, this is happening.
How old were you at the time? 10?
10.
Was I 10?
10 or 11. Yeah, 11.
Wow.
Honestly, did you know how to count all that money at the time?
This is funny. Tell them the story. This is great.
All right, so this is actually a really funny story because I was walking around, and at the time I wasn't really thinking about like myself or like, you know what we said about not flaunting money because it like you got to show your authenticity and stuff. After that, I was flaunting my cash. I had it in a fan and I was waving myself. I was like feeling so good because I just made this money. And of course I've grown as a person since 11. But I was full out just so proud of all this money I just made. And I even walked a guy to the ATM to like make sure he paid me. I was like so excited. This was the first time I ever made money. So I've grown as a person, don't worry. But I remember I was having a conversation with someone and my mom came to me and she's like, hey, I would want to talk to you for a minute. I'm like, cool. Yeah.
Was this while you were fanning yourself?
Yeah, basically.
right after.
I remember this very vividly because it's a very funny moment for me. But I remember my mom sitting me down and she took my cash. I'm like, okay, that's a little weird. I feel like that's on the brink of thievery. But you're my mother, so I'll accept it. And so she took my money down and she's like, okay, this goes to expenses. This goes to your workers. This goes to the donations you promised everyone that you would make. This goes to your future, just in case if you need it. And this is all you got. And she handed me like $300. And I went from having $1,600 and then having $300. That's a big leap of money that I wasn't very happy with. And that was a moment when I learned about the terrible thing called margins. Well, at the time, it was very bad for me. But that was a moment that like really impacted me in learning because I actually like made money and I actually had to learn it in the moment of, wow, money has meaning, and the things that I was all trying to buy to help make this clothing actually had worth and actually had to be paid for. So it was a very funny moment for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's the real schooling right there.
Yeah.
So we don't care about
That's the school.
all our writing. The thing I say to Hanalei, I'm like, as long as you can autograph your books and spell your words correctly, you're golden. And be able to pay and do the profit margins, you're great.
Anyways.
So what I absolutely loved about this story is the fact that from 11 years old, you gave her the, the understanding that, okay, this is how it is done. And y'all didn't save her. Most people, most parents would save. But you allowed Hanalei to literally go through that. I'm pretty sure right now you're like so grateful.
I'm very grateful for all these experiences.
Maybe not
and,
at the moment.
Well, not in the moment, of course, but learning lessons come from lessons. It comes from newfound knowledge that may be uncomfortable because you're growing. So, but now I'm very grateful for that moment. I was a little pissed off for a bit, but like now I'm fine. I got to buy some froyo, so that's pretty good. Yeah.
Awesome. So what hobby do you have?
It's really weird having a balance of hobbies and business. I know that's weird saying it as a kid. But for me, my passion and one thing I've always loved and a huge lesson I learned from my dad is do whatever makes you wake up in the morning, that no one needs to tell you to do, that immediately when you wake up, that's what you're thinking about. That is the passion that you have, and that is where you need to put your time and put your efforts. Like my dad always says, when he wakes up, no one has to tell him to surf because he can just surf because that is what he loves. And that's how I feel like you identify your passions. If no one needs to tell you to do it, and you just do it, that's where your true love for that thing lies. For me, I've always been an artist. I've always been someone who's carried around my sketchbook. I was actually doodling while people were talking today. And just opening up my ideas to creative outlets. And that's where fashion came from. That's where art derived my passion for fashion, because it was bringing my sketches and it was bringing my characters that I would make into reality. And that's how I saw it. It's like you can go to Disneyland and you can see your favorite cartoons be people now. But for me, it was having my actual drawings and having the clothes in those paintings be worn on people. It was almost like my imagination was coming to life. And that was like a huge thing for me.
So I have probably like 2 more questions or 3 more questions, right?
Yeah.
What would you tell the 14-year-old child that's listening right now to you? What would you tell that person?
I would say follow the happiness. Follow the light that guides you, because I feel like a lot of times from what I've seen in other people is that they always say, oh, I wish I was doing this when I was younger. I wish I could do this. I wish I had your energy. Because as we grow up and when we're in a space of our light being condemned, almost like a bird caged, their wings cannot grow, that passion cannot grow. And when we expand our light to follow what makes us happiest, and when we are supported by people to nurture that light, that's when we can really grow. And it's by doing our passions and it's by doing what makes us happiness that we can find so much more fulfillment and happiness in our life. So what I would say to someone who could be in my shoes right now, or someone my age, I would say just follow what brings you the most amount of joy, and remember to never dim your light for anyone else, because when you dim your light, that unhappiness will wash over you. I remember I got bullied in school for a while, so that light was being condemned like a birdcage. I had to change who I was to fit the ideas of other kids, to feel accepted, because I didn't feel like they liked who I was. And to fit in, I needed to change myself. And that was the lesson I learned from being bullied. And after I stepped out was when I could only see the final painting. And when I could see the full piece of, wow, I was actually damaging myself more than helping myself. I thought at the time masking who I was what was going to help me succeed in life of having friends, when really that was damaging my soul and damaging my heart. So I would say never mask yourself for anyone and never condemn your light. Find that light inside you and follow it.
Awesome. So we're going to wrap this up tonight, and I just have one last request. We're going to have to teach me how to surf.
You gotta get to Bali.
There we go.
There you go.
Bali 2022.
Let's do it.
Guys, thank you so much. You've been amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're awesome. Thank you. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Geez, I just love the Swan family. They're so cool. Guys, one more round of applause. So great. So I believe that we're gonna have some music and a dance-off tonight. Yeah? Who's the best? Jason, you said you're the best dancer? No? Ramel, what about you? You're laughing over there. Bart! Woo! Awesome, awesome, awesome. Awesome. All right, so guys, DJ, spin that shit. I'm not dancing, by the way.
You guys are willing to loosen up. It's the end of. Get up, shake yourself, get that blood flowing. If you feel like dancing, we'd love to see you do so.